Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are about 1 minute away from actually starting, so please hold tight while the rest of the attendees start to join. So give us one more second here and we'll get started. All right, everybody, let's get going here. So my name's Jenna. Thank you so much for joining us. I work for Emerging Destinations. We represent cool companies and cool places. Today we are being joined by a couple of different teams, actually. We have Sade from the GTA, who's going to be Guyana Tourism Authority, who's going to be giving us just a very brief introduction to Guyana, being that today we're actually talking about discovering the hidden Guianas. So we're going to be talking about multiple different countries. So for that, we have brought in Andrea and Salvador, who are actually located in Guyana, but they're from Wilderness Explorers, and they're going to be taking us through a discovery of all three of the countries. So this is actually the first time that we've ever hosted a webinar like this, where we're actually going to be taking you through all of them. So it's going to be very fun and exciting. Salvador and Andrea are hilarious, so I think that you will be very entertained by them today. I know I've been laughing with them for the past couple of days, so looking forward to hearing what they have to tell us. But before we get too far into that, I'm going to take a quick minute to introduce our portfolio to you. So, of course, as I mentioned, we're talking about Guyana Tourism Authority today. Since that's in South America, I'm just going to focus on our South American clients. Of course, you can see on your screen there, we do have quite a few new ones actually as well. So if you do have any questions about any of the clients that you see up on your screen, my email address is there, and I'm more than happy to help you answer any questions. If you want any digital materials or you want to request a training for you and your team, I'm more than happy to help you with that. So again, I said Guyana in South America. We also represent Las Torres Patagonia, and then the Grand Hotels Lux, who have properties in Uruguay and Argentina. So that's all that we have for the moment for South America. So with that, I'm going to hand everything over to Sade, and she's going to just give you a very brief introduction, as I mentioned, to Guyana before passing things over to Andrea and Salvador. So thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the presentation today.
Thank you, Jenna. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Sade Cameron, and I work with the Guyana Tourism Authority here in Georgetown, Guyana. So really quickly, I'll just take you guys through some brief facts about Guyana, as well as some COVID-19 updates before handing you over to Andrea and Salvador. Guyana is a rare kind of place, nature's beating heart. It is a small South American country about the size of Idaho, located just below the Caribbean Sea. It is the only English-speaking country in South America and is bordered by Suriname to the east, Brazil to the south and southeast, and Venezuela to the west. Guyana and Suriname, in addition to French Guiana, are three countries that make up the Guiana Shield, which is basically a 1.7 billion year old geological formation in the northeast South America, with one of the highest biodiversity and cultural diversity in the world, which Salvador and Andrea will talk to you about a bit more. Okay, I don't seem to be having some difficulties here with my slide.
That's okay. I think you just had the last couple updates left, but we can just hand things over to Andrea and
Yes, we can.
Salvador if that's all right. So I did also forget to mention a couple housekeeping items. I was so excited to get into today's presentation, so I forgot to mention. If you are not familiar with the GoToWebinar control panel, there is an area to type through questions. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type those through, and we're going to get Andrea and Salvador to answer as many of those as possible at the end of the webinar, of course, time depending. And we will also be recording this webinar. So if you do have to step away or if you can't stay for the whole thing, I will be sending out the webinar, the recording rather, and the webinar follow-up. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Andrea and Salvador. Just make sure you put it in presentation mode there, my dear, please.
Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, Jenna. All right, Jenna. Change presenter.
You're dealing with old people here. Hold on a minute.
Wait. Can you see the screen?
We can see the screen. Just you got to play from start. So the presentations and.
Okay. Yeah, we are. Good. I don't know if you guys can see us. We want to say hello first.
All right. There you go. Yeah.
Hi.
You can.
All right. We just want to introduce ourselves first.
I'm Salvador, and this is my better half, Andrea.
We work with Wilderness Explorers, which is the only DMC in Guyana, destination management company. Salvador specializes in customer service, and he's really our go-to person for VIP clients, for rum tastings, for history, for literature. He was born and raised in Guyana. I am a replant.
Yes.
But I've been here for 11 years now, and this is home. So we'd like to just tell you about our 3 favorite countries and how you can get from one to the next. So let's take us away, and I know that Sade told you a little bit about us, but if you see over here on the top right, you see Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana.
Which are 3 little countries, not so little, at the top of South America that are in South America, but are not really South American, that are in the Caribbean, but not really the Caribbean, and very unique and very different. They're all part of, geographically or geologically, part of the Guiana Shield, which is one of the oldest mountain land masses in the world. It goes back to when it was one continent, Pangaea, when we were joined with Africa. So well over 600 million years old. There were originally 5 Guianas. Portuguese Guyana became part of Brazil and to the east of French Guiana, and Spanish Guyana, the Orinoco mouth, became part of Venezuela.
He knows too much. Okay. But what's really cool is that in Guyana, they speak English, in Suriname, they speak Dutch, and in French Guiana, of course, they speak French.
And technically, French Guiana is not a country, it's a department of France. So they speak French and, right, go on.
So a lot of people don't really know where Guyana is, and we affectionately say that it sits on the shoulder of South America. It is about, for the North Americans on this call, it's about the size of the tri-state area, with less people in the entire country than New York City has on unemployment.
Oh, please, and a block, then a couple of blocks in New York.
So our total population is anywhere between 750 and 780,000.
100,000, right.
Okay. There are some really interesting things about Guyana. I think the first thing is that it's the only English-speaking country in South America. So if you are interested in coming, or you have clients or guests or family who are interested in coming, there is no language barrier in Guyana. Well, there's dialect, but English is the language.
Sometimes you have to pay attention, even me, to
Yes.
really understand, but yes,
Yes,
we speak English.
And what's really fantastic is that 85% of the country is still covered in forest. So we often say that the majority, 95% of the population, live on the coast of,
And they do.
of Guyana. Once you leave Georgetown and you get, and we'll show you pictures, but once you leave Georgetown and you get into the interior, you can go for miles and miles and miles without seeing anybody. And because we are South America's best kept secret, within 1 year, Guyana gets as many tourists as perhaps Machu Picchu does in a day.
Yep.
So it's really quite something.
And because we get so few tourists, we're excited to see you. And that also applies to Suriname and French Guiana. We're excited to see tourists. We're not at all, you know.
And we're in a much better place to welcome guests because there are so many more flights than there used to be. So you know, American Airlines, Caribbean Airlines, Copa from the west coast of the States, JetBlue. Our daughter just came down a couple of weeks ago on JetBlue and was very, very pleased with the service. So it's a lot of stuff to understand the connections are much stronger than they used to be. The other thing that's really important, and I will say this with a great deal of pride from Wilderness Explorers, is that we've partnered with the Guyana Tourism Authority to develop the sanitation protocols for tourism. And it was funded by the IDB Lab and by the Canadian government. And we have spent the past, well, since November, training and working with the lodges so that you will feel safe, the lodges will feel safe, and the communities will be safe. And we have had many people comment that our protocols are really exemplary.
And stricter than in many other parts of the world.
Well, this is true. And we've developed these tourism bubbles. So if you land in Georgetown and Wilderness has booked your tour, and we will meet you at the airport in a sanitized bus with a driver who is trained on the protocols, who will take your suitcases from you. They'll be disinfected. You'll get into a safe vehicle with, you know, hand sanitizer, masks, all of that. From the point your foot hits the ground in Guyana, we've got you. You will then stay at a hotel that has been approved by the Guyana Tourism Authority, that their protocols, their standard operating procedures have been approved to be COVID safe. And then each lodge you go to will be a lodge that has received approval. So we're really careful about keeping you in your travel bubble.
But and of course, it's not only protecting you, but it's also protecting local staff and local communities from anything coming in.
Now, people often say, so what does a Guyanese look like? Well,
everybody.
It's true. It is everybody, you know, because they often talk about the 6 races of Guyana. We are such a multi-ethnic destination.
It started out with First Peoples, the Amerindians, or the American Indians, as we say Amerindians here in Guyana, the indigenous people. It was then followed, of course, by the Europeans, who then brought slaves, so the Afro-Guyanese that came. When slavery was abolished in 1832, finally, they brought people from all over the world, including Portuguese like myself, and then the East Indians. The largest sector of the population are East Indians that the British brought from India to replace the slaves on the plantation. And they're now so much so that they're now about 45% of the population is East Indian from India. So again, even though we're South American, even though we're Caribbean, we're different.
And, you know, and they're Guyanese. They do not differentiate and say, you know, I'm Chinese Guyanese or I'm Portuguese Guyanese. They are Guyanese. Now, when you get here, the first hotel we're showing you is our favorite, yes. Our personal favorite, and it's
my personal favorite because I was born across the street, and I've known this place since I was first started walking.
It is quite a special place if you're looking for a boutique hotel with the old Guyanese architecture. It's got the charm,
all made out of wood.
Yes, and the customer service that you would expect,
and the history, and quite a few notable people going way back to Edward VIII before he gave up the throne for Wallace Simpson stayed here. And Mick Jagger and various, it goes way back.
But if you or your guests need a recognized name and traditional hotel 5-star, in Guyana it's 5-star, there is the Marriott. And the Marriott is consistent with their service. It is rooms and service that you will recognize. It is different. It is not, you know, the charm of a boutique hotel. It is a chain, but it is very well done. This is Georgetown. And before you jump in and tell them all about Georgetown, do you see the color of the roofs? Do you see the green and the red and the, you know, when we first, we've been here, we migrated in 2010. And the first year we went back to visit family, when we landed in New York, I felt like I was at the beginning of the Wizard of Oz in black and white. Because in Guyana, when
Where
you
did
land,
all the color go?
yes, when you land here, the whole town just pops of red and green and blue. And when we were landing at JFK, I was like, what happened?
Everything is gray and brown and muted tones.
But now tell them about the
so
seawall.
Georgetown and all along the coast of Guyana is actually below sea level. So what you're looking at there, there's a wall along the coast that keeps the sea out. And then there's another wall further back to keep the swamp waters back. It's very, very fertile land, which was the reason for developing it in the first place, and first developed by the Dutch, who of course knew how to impolder and build canals, and there are canals everywhere, and everything is right angles because it's a canal that's in a straight line drains much better than a curve. So there are no curved streets in Georgetown, well, one.
So if you were going to take them on a city tour, I think one of the first places you might take them.
Absolutely. The majority of the buildings in Georgetown are still, the concrete is creeping in, but still wood. This one you're looking at is the largest wooden church in the world. It's actually the largest one of the largest wooden buildings in the world. Any Guyanese you ask to will tell you definitely it is the largest. I hate that there are no Guyanese listening, right?
But you see the
it's
top.
number 3. It's not actually.
Do you see the cross across the
yes.
top?
And it's absolutely amazing going inside, and the colored glass windows, and it's actually quite spectacular. And then this is another wooden building now with the old Demerara shutters up top. The bauxite boats coming from Canada to pick up the bauxite would bring blocks of ice as ballast in the boats coming to pick up the bauxite ore, and they would put it on the windowsills of the upstairs windows covered in burlap. And of course, this was the original air conditioning.
And it works.
It does work. I've tried it.
And if you go back to Carnambo Lodge, you'll see those windows there also. They have the Demerara shutters for the ice block.
It's a development of the Bahama shutter that's hinged from the top. But anyway. And then there's the Botanical Gardens with its old Victorian ironworks.
It's the Kissing Bridge.
This is the Kissing Bridge. And the Botanical Gardens has well over 200 species of birds that you can find right there in the middle of Georgetown. The birds go early in the morning, late in the afternoon, including a number of endemic species like the blood-colored woodpecker.
Which we'll show.
And it's just really...
I did want to say something here that some of these pictures, if you're seeing someone without a mask, these are pre-COVID pictures. We are really, really strict about wearing the masks here. Oh, there.
And then quite a few of the
manatees.
ponds in the Botanical Gardens and in the National Park have manatees. And I've been doing this since I was a little boy. You collect some grass and you go to the side and you slap the water with the grass, and the manatees come and you feed them, and it's a great activity.
Loads of fun.
Especially I find that most of the women guests think they're the cutest things ever. They really are not cute. They're quite ugly.
Oh, they're adorable.
Oh, stop.
Then in the evenings, you can go on the Demerara River on a sunset boat trip.
Right.
And the birds are just amazing. Do you
And
see in the upper left-hand corner the scarlet ibis? They are bright, bright, bright
Andrea,
red.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. I think that we're a couple slides behind you, and I'm not sure if that's just the delay from your internet connection. Oh, there we see the manatees now.
Oh boy.
oh no.
Yeah, so I just wanted to stop you before you got too far ahead. Just it takes about an extra, it seems about 15 seconds before the slides changes on
Click
our
them.
end.
So we'll slow down a little bit, Jenna.
And just click them earlier.
We were trying
Just
to
click
get
them earlier. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's the best bet. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks so much.
Do you see the scarlet ibises now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Very
Okay.
good. Okay.
It's okay. And this is the blood-colored woodpecker. In the next slide, that's an endemic that the bird watchers go crazy over to get. Click again. This is our national bird, the kanji pheasant, or the hoatzin, or the stink bird. He's got a number of names. It's almost prehistoric. We can take you. Georgetown has 4 open-air markets. Well, half of them are covered, half of it is covered, and then the outside is a big open-air market as well. And you can take a market tour. And
well, hang on. I'm getting there. All of these peppers, you know, Salvador grew every one of them. But the point is that there is so much produce here. And when you do go to the market, there's Delvin Adams in the red shirt in the middle, and he is a chef, and he is the owner of Backyard Cafe. And one of the tours that we do is we go into the market. Again, this picture, please know, was before COVID, because normally, actually right now, we're not doing market tours at all. But hopefully by the time you come, we'll be able to do them, and with your mask. And you go in and you find different produce that you haven't seen before. And then Delvin will take you back to the Backyard Cafe. And just as the name says, it is his backyard. And he will, right in front of you, cook all of the things that you picked out at the market together. Some things that you have no idea what they are. And this is his, I mean, really, when I say world famous, it is at this point.
it is, yes.
Garlic fish. And it is absolutely amazing. And we're vegetarian and we don't eat fish. But
this week.
there's Salvador doing rum tastings. He's been trained by the El Dorado folks on the rums. And how many awards have they won?
It's no rum has won more than the world prize more than once. This 15-year-old El Dorado has won it 8 times, and the 12-year-old, which actually happens to be my favorite, is coming up close behind with 5. And part of it is the unique stills that they were able to rescue, going all the way back to a double wooden pot still from 1732 that is still in use. There are no wooden pot stills in the world that are being used to make rum. We have 3.
But one of the really cool things to do is to have a rum tasting done so you can compare the difference between the, you know, the 8, the 12, the 15, the 21-year-old, and then follow that with a rum infused dinner. And it's really fun. It's really cool to do. Then you leave Georgetown and you head into the interior. This is my picture. This is a picture I took from the plane sitting next to a small girl who said to me, Auntie, look out the window and see all the fields of broccoli. And I've never looked at the rainforest the same. It does look like broccoli.
And this is rush hour.
Remember we said at the beginning that we get about as many guests in a year as Machu Picchu gets in a day? Well, this is a perfect example.
And Guyana means land of many waters, and really you can't go 100 yards without hitting a river, a creek, or a small stream or something. And a lot of what we do is river trips and boats on the river, and it's just wonderful.
And this is
in the south of the country. We have a wide open area near to the Brazilian border that are open savannas, but once a year they flood, similar to the Pantanal. And a lot of the tourism product that we have is in this area. because you've got rainforest, you've got savanna, you've got riparian forest, you've got mountains, you've got all the different ecosystems, and hence you have all the birds. There are over 800 different kinds of birds. Sunsets out in the savannah.
I don't know if
absolutely
they're up to the sunsets yet because we're a little delayed, but
I
the
know.
next slide you should see, if you haven't seen it yet, you will see it shortly, is one of the spectacular sunsets over the river in the Rupununi, and they are just magnificent. We're going to change the slide now so you have a chance to come catch up with us.
And one of the things we also have here is community owned and operated tourism, by which we mean that the community actually owns the business and owns the lodge, and they work and operate the lodge itself. So they also decide what they're going to spend their profits on. The village council decides how they spend their profits, and everything is done in consultation. There is no majority rule. You sit there, and if it takes 3 days, you sit and you decide what you're going to do, and nobody gets up from there without agreeing.
It's really, for me, it was a tremendous education, because everybody's voice is heard, and nobody gets up from this meeting and walks away and says, well, I didn't agree with that. What happens is everybody sits down, and they as Salvador said, it can go on for hours or even carried on to the next day or two. And it's, you know, everybody from the granny in the back to the uncle in the front to the kids who want to understand why we want to do this. What are our goals? What are our plans? And it's all done in consultation. Within community-owned and operated tourism, you have two kinds of benefits. You have direct benefits, and direct benefits are the people who are employed by the Eco Lodge, the cooks, the boat captains, the guides. And then you have indirect benefits, and these are individuals who live in the communities, like the fisherman who goes fishing and brings fish to the lodge and gets paid. That is an indirect benefit, because
and let me tell you, you see that fish that he's holding in his hand there? That's a peacock bass, and that is the most delicious.
You marinate it in a little bit of lime, garlic, and fresh thyme.
Yeah. Oh, it's too delicious.
Yes. All right, but let's
Right,
keep
go
on going.
Sorry.
So, you know, whether you need greens from the garden for guests at the lodge, one of the farmers would sell that, or the guava, or handicrafts for guests to buy. Those are considered indirect benefits. Now, this is really, really interesting, and something that I think that you and your guests would really, really appreciate understanding. The profits from the community-owned and operated tourism is something that the community, through consultation, decides what to do with. It is not more in the bank, and it is not, you know, just more money. They really decide what the purpose of it is. So Sarama Ecolodge, that community decided to use their profits to provide scholarships for 2 women in their community to go to Cuba to become doctors. And the caveat was that when they came back, they had to spend 2 years in the community, servicing the community, before they could go into another hospital. And it was truly remarkable.
It was.
And it's tourism money that did that.
And money is also spent to help the schools.
Supplies.
With supplies. It just...
And the money's also used for medical training. So here is an example. This is the staff at Carnambo Lodge, and they were trained by Nurse Marcy Graves-Andy, who's on the right-hand side, who is the head nurse at Mercy Hospital.
I was the patient on the backboard.
Yes, you were. And you really were more, I think, safer in the interior, because everybody was trained in emergency medical response through the American Heart Association. They knew what to do if there was a problem, and it was really quite remarkable. There's also guide training by peers. So these are 2, what you're seeing in front of you are 2 other community-owned and run lodges that are just starting, that came to Sarama to be trained by a senior guide. And it was something very interesting to understand from the guest point of view. And
Because they're being trained by their peers, it was much easier than being trained from somebody from the coast who's not really from an Amerindian community. So here is being trained by Sarama Ecolodge, which has started and been in operation now for 20 years, training upcoming communities that also want to do tourism.
so
It worked really well.
These are the cabins at Sarama. So if you were to come, this is where you would stay. And these are some of the activities that you would do at Sarama. It's a wonderful, wonderful location, community owned and run. You can visit the community, you go bird watching, you go on the river.
You can even do a little 3-day survival course out in the bush. How do you survive in the rainforest without, electricity?
Nah. You can do that.
I love it.
Anyway, Sarama also works very hard to preserve their indigenous culture and their heritage. So from the small kids up to the elders, they will put on a cultural show for you. People don't walk around in the community dressed this way. It's important that you understand this, but that this is a way of preserving their culture and sharing it. And it's loads of fun. They'll get you up dancing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
This is Riwa Ecolodge, and it's right on the river, as you can see here.
And that's another community-owned and operated ecolodge. And these are the cabins, and they're all self-contained.
Oh, you should have to tell them about the cabins.
And the cabins, the bathrooms at the back, a high wall, but open to the skies. So one time I was having a shower and I looked up and I was being stared at.
By this guy.
By this. And I was like, what are you looking at?
He's like, you look like me. Whoops, sorry. This is where you have breakfast at Riwa, outside, right on the river. It's an experience you need to have. And then climbing a Warmi mountain, look at those, here it is, the fields of broccoli,
The lungs of the earth.
Yes.
And fishing with a bow and arrow, I have tried it many times. I only catch water, but they know how to do it. They've been doing it all their life.
This is Rovin Alvin, who is this guy.
Master fisherman.
He is a master fisherman. And he also, Riwa is very famous for their catch and release sport fishing. So Rovin is just as handy with a bow and arrow as he is with a fly fishing rod. And the fish that they catch and release, and I can't stress that enough, it's not catch and keep, it's catch and release, is the arapaima.
And this is a small one.
Yes, but they can be 5-man fish where it takes 5 people to hold it. But the point is that Riwa developed this catch and release program with aquatic veterinarians so that they developed the proper protocols for catching and releasing the fish safely. Of course, there's lots of wildlife up in Riwa. This is Waiken Ranch.
Which is just quite close to the Brazilian border. It's a newer ranch, but again, there are different levels of accommodation. And this is actually a working ranch, and they do farm to table. You go out and you pick your produce and bring it in.
Right.
But they also have cattle, and you can go out with the vaqueros and round up the cattle and bring them back in. And
beautiful places to swim, lots of birds, lots of fishing. It's a great spot. And then you got Wichabai, which is a working ranch.
Also.
Yeah. And this is the guest house on the right. Again, it's very basic, but lovely, really, really lovely. And your hosts, Justin and Aaron, will take excellent care of you.
And anything you want to do, they will organize it and you will get to do it. It's just the way it is.
This is Carnambo Lodge, and this is from the air. So you can see, this is where Salvador brought me when we first moved here, and we were the managers of Carnambo for 6 years. And you see, there's no Bloomingdale's around the corner.
There's no store down the road. There's nothing.
It was a fantastic experience.
It was.
And these are what the cabins look like. And you have your own ensuite cabin, lovely beds, and it looks basic with the brick cabin, but it's got everything that you have to deal with. This is one of the events
Activities
in the evening.
you go out into one of the ponds in the boat and you sit and you sip your rum punch, your world famous rum punch, and you watch this giant water lily just open. Takes about half an hour, open before your eyes, and the beetles come in and the birds coming in to roost, and it's pretty amazing.
It certainly is.
And this water lily is enormous. What you're looking at there is about a foot across.
Yeah. It's bigger than a dinner plate.
Yes.
And then, of course, in the savannas, you have the anteaters, and this one's got a baby on its back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, can you see, if you look at the picture, can you see how the pattern of the baby falls right in line with the mama? So it's really camouflage from a distance.
Yes. And giant river otters, Carnambo has a program to rescue giant river otters and return them to the wild that have been abandoned or.
So really protecting wildlife through tourism is something that is done in many of the lodges within the Rupununi.
And giant storks, the Jabiru stork that is an
3
adult,
feet high.
3 to 4 feet high.
That's the one on the right. The 4 on the left are the babies. This is Cayman House Community Lodge. Cayman House, as the name says, is, excuse me, where they do black cayman research. This is the inside of the main lodge. There's a black cayman.
And these guys get big. I mean, 14 feet is not uncommon.
So when you go tagging cayman, tell them how that works.
Well, you go out in a separate boat and you look at the guys. What they're doing is they catch them, they like right here, they bring them and they bring them up onto a sandbank, they weigh them,
But wait, you're not in the boat with them.
No.
You're in the boat behind them. And then once the cayman has been brought up on, if you see in the top right corner where the guy is in the blue shirt, they put tape over the mouth. And then the cayman becomes quite docile.
Yeah, once they're subdued, they just surrender.
But this has been research that's been going on for quite a while.
And at Cayman House, they also do turtle conservation. What they do is they rescue the eggs and they hatch them out. They keep the turtles, they hold them for about a year and then release them into the wild. So because the shell hardens, they are predated much less and survival rate becomes much higher. So much so the turtle population is really expanding very, very rapidly. This is another lodge, at a rainforest lodge.
They
all right,
catch up with us.
They'll catch it when they catch it. This is in the middle of the rainforest. So again, you've got savanna, you've got rainforest, you've no lodge is like another, is the same as the other lodge. They have a canopy walkway that's nearby that's quite spectacular. You're 60 feet up off the ground. The birds, the animals, everything. And then sometimes when you go out on the road at night, because the main road, which is only a dirt road, the main road from Georgetown to Brazil, and there is only one, passes quite close. You can walk out to the road, and sometimes at night you can see, it's great for seeing animals, and because everybody uses the road, including the animals.
The next slide, and I hope you've caught up to where we are, because I know this is taking a lot more time than we planned with the way it is. But this is the inside of one of the cabins, just to give you an idea. It's basic, but you've got everything that you need. And this is the outside.
And there's a hummingbird and butterfly garden, and there's over 12 species of hummingbirds that come in. They've also started putting up using some hummingbird feeders, and they're quite unbelievable. And then when you go out at night on the road, as I was saying, sometimes you can see this guy.
Sometimes,
you can't promise, but you never know.
And then another wonderful place to stop is the Pacaraima Mountain Inn. And this is a small inn that was built by a father and her son with their left hand and their right hand. And magnificent views.
Good food too.
Excellent food.
Auntie V can cook.
She certainly can. we're going to move on. You're probably behind us a little bit, but we'll tell you that we're about to talk about Iracrama, which is really a research
station. It's a huge research station that on the Essequibo River. It's been in existence for quite a few years, but they also have cabins, and you can join in and see what these are the cabins, and you can join in and see what's happening. Very nice spacious cabins with all have verandas with hammocks. You can check out the research, but you can also do boat trips up the river. There's also a really nice walk up to a lookout point called Turtle Mountain that in
If
the
you look-
slide in the middle there, you can see
two little white dots, and I think that's two of Jenna's colleagues. I think that's David and Hugh there. And then the view is just magnificent. It's a good climb.
it is,
but it's certainly worth it.
and you do it at your own pace, and there are handrails that they've put in. And then if you are if you've got limited resources,
This
and
is
you
not
can-
for you.
and you can afford to pay for helicopters and stuff, you can go to see Mountrama, which is Tepui, that 3 countries, Brazil, Venezuela, and Guyana meet there. And it's really absolutely spectacular. And landing on top, Mountrama is actually spectacular. It's the highest mountain in Guyana. It's 9,000 feet. But again, this is old lake bottom. The top of this mountain was the bottom of a lake in Pangaea, one continent. And then there's Kite Shore Falls, which is our #1 attraction in Guyana, and it's absolutely spectacular in the wet season and in the dry season, and you have everything in between, depending on when you go. I personally like it more in the dry season. To me, it's a little more movement, a little more wispy, a little more poetic, but rainy season, it's just massive and roaring.
And you can see that there are no railings, there are no benches. I mean, this is just nature at its best.
It's the highest single drop waterfall in the world, and it's massive. And then nesting nearby are the Guyanan cock of the rock, these bright orange birds. There's a lek, you can see the males dancing. And then in the giant bromeliads, there's a little tiny golden frog.
That lives right there its
these
whole
giant,
life.
These are the largest bromeliads in the world, and he spends his whole life in the leaves. There's a little pool of water that collects, and he's living in there. Transportation in Guyana, this is the big plane. This is the 19-seater. And then you've got the 12-seater, which is the one that pretty much is used by for everything to go
You
to
can
Kite
hear it
Shore.
overhead.
Yes, one of them is just passing overhead because we're fairly close to Ogle Airport.
There are many forms of transportation. You go by road, you'll go into a vehicle, a 4x4 vehicle, a boat on the river. But what else does Wilderness Explorers do with the 3 Guianas? So let's talk a little bit now about Suriname, which is honestly one of my favorite places. But I think you guys are behind us a little bit from what Jenna's telling me, so I'm going to wait just a minute. Suriname, as close as it is to Guyana, there are many similarities, but there are so many differences. And it is such a welcoming, I think, the hospitality in Suriname, the people are so kind. We are too.
Yes.
But I mean, I think that's what we have in common.
But also, I think one of the differences between Suriname and Guyana is that they had a large maroon population of escaped slaves that went off into the bush and started these villages that survive to this day, and they're quite large. I mean,
Well, we'll get to
thousands of people.
Let's talk about the.
But the capital, Paramaribo, it's on the World Heritage. It's one of the World Heritage Sites by UNESCO way back in 2002. The architecture, again, mostly wood, but very different from Georgetown's architecture. Very Dutch, you know, the roofs with the little things pushing out that we didn't have. Again, very untouched rainforest. Most people live close to the coast and around Paramaribo.
Let's look at Paramaribo a little bit. Oh, this is my favorite thing. Is that do you know that the English exchanged Suriname with the Dutch for New York?
In 1667, and the Dutch and later the British thought they were getting the best of the deal. Little did we know.
Okay.
And this is also, they also have a wooden cathedral. And when you go there, they're going to claim that their wooden cathedral is the biggest, and it's not. We have a constant battle going on between Guyana and Suriname of who has the biggest wooden cathedral.
But as Guyana is the only English-speaking country in South America, Suriname is the only Dutch-speaking country in South America.
Right.
And we have 9 indigenous tribes, and they have 8 indigenous tribes. And again, getting to Suriname is much easier than it ever used to be. But certainly from Georgetown, hopping from the small airport on a Trans-Guyana flight from Guyana's Ogle Airport to Suriname to their small airport, it's at what, an hour?
It's an hour and 10, 15 minutes.
And it's easy.
And you're downtown to downtown. The bigger airport in both cases is 25 miles out of the city.
Yeah, so if you can do it to the small airport, it makes a lot of sense. This is also a really nice example of the architecture.
Of some local architecture. And then there's also a fort press. There's also, this is a fort that was originally built by the British because Suriname was actually controlled by the British up until about when they exchanged, 1667.
How do you remember these dates?
Oh, please.
Okay,
And,
go ahead.
So yet there's an English connection, there's a Dutch connection, there's a French connection, same as in Guyana. One year we were all three actually. And they also have, one of the unique things they have in Suriname is a Jewish connection that we really didn't have in Guyana also. And this is a Jewish synagogue next to a Muslim mosque right next to each other.
They share a parking lot.
And they're brothers.
So cool.
They're brothers. They really are. And it's so wonderful. But the first Jewish settlement in the Americas was in Suriname, and it was up the river. And then this mosque is one of 5 mosques in the world, and they're all in the Caribbean, that have sand floors. Not the mosque, sorry, the synagogue has a sand floor, so that if you listen at the door, you can't tell how many people are inside. It muffles their footprint, but also for fire.
Well, because on the Sabbath,
you're not allowed.
So if one of the candles were to drop, the sand would put the fire out right away.
And there's this one in Suriname, in Paramaribo is one of the oldest, but there's one in Tobago, in Curacao, in St. Thomas, and in Jamaica.
And I have to tell you, I mean, my background happens to be Jewish, and I was completely overwhelmed by this synagogue and the welcoming that we got. We spent most of the day there. It was really exceptional. And the food, oh my gosh, the food in Suriname.
Again, one of the differences that Suriname has with us, after slavery was abolished, because they were Dutch, they brought a lot of Indonesian people to replace the slaves on the plantations. And of course, they brought their food and their cooking with them. And again, it's the mix. One of the most wonderful things about the Three Guianas is the food.
This is Frederiksdorp, which is a wonderful resort that you can go to.
Just outside Paramaribo, across the river.
And they have on the river, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here, these beautiful dolphins.
Little river, small river, pink-bellied dolphins you go out there in the boat in the afternoons, and you sit there and you have a drink and you have a snack and you watch these dolphins playing right near to the boat.
So Frederiksdorp is close to Paramaribo. It's an easy transfer over there, and it's lovely. And again, you've got the hospitality. But then you can take the boat up the Surinamese River.
You drive for about 100 kilometers to the river. You get in one of these long boats, and you go up the Suriname River to a place called Danpati.
We're going to slow down a little bit. Are you caught up, Jenna? I hope so. This is Danpati Lodge.
And the cabins are just lovely. But what is really wonderful about this is that you're in the middle of the maroon culture and maroon villages, downriver, upriver, everywhere, and constantly passing. And they're just so friendly and so waving to you. But the culture that they have kept is just, it's like Africa out of Africa. It's just absolutely incredible.
But so welcoming and so willing to teach you and to get you up dancing and to show you how to wiggle your hips. This is the inside of the Danpati cabins and where you go for meals and that sort of thing. It's really lovely. One of my favorite places. And then you got Caballebo.
Caballebo is a lot. You can only get to Caballebo. You have to fly in, spend 2 days, and fly out. It's a little more high end, but again,
it's a lot more high end.
It is a lot more high end.
It's really high end. I could live there. It's
absolutely
quite beautiful. And there's a lot of wildlife, and that's important to know there too. Because you fly in and fly out, you see there's not an awful lot of traffic, so the animals are comfortable, I think, with tourists.
Right.
Ocelot spotting is their big thing. And that's, loads of fun.
And to me, the ocelot is by far the most beautiful of the 6 cats we have here in the Guianas. The pattern is just absolutely incredible.
There's so much more to tell you about Suriname, but we would like to tell you by taking you there. Also, when we get to questions, we'll tell you how to contact us if you have questions about any of these specific lodges or activities. But we're going to move on to French Guiana because we are keenly aware of time.
French Guiana, of course, like I said, is a department of France. So, of course, you cross the border, a cup of coffee is €4. They only use euros, but the roads are in perfect condition.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
snazzy.
It really is. And then one of their big attractions, of course, are the Devil's Island, which is actually one of 3 islands off the coast of Kourou.
We're not there yet, though. We're in Cayenne.
In Cayenne. Cayenne is a small, very eclectic is the right word, town, but interesting.
It is interesting. There's a lot of history.
A lot of history there. There are a few hotels. There are very good restaurants. Of course, it's European French food.
But you see,
so very tasty, but small portions.
Well, for you, not for me. But the hotels are quite lovely. They really are. And this one is in Cayenne also.
Yes,
Caire
Albert, yes. Caire Albert.
And then when you go to Kourou, in order to go to Devil's Island, you would stay at Hotel Atlantis. Again, we've stayed there. The food is great. The people are lovely.
The best wine of the 3 Guianas.
Yes.
Because you're in France. And then, of course, I don't know how many of you have read the story of Papillon.
Or seen the movie.
But a lot of what he said was taken from other people. There's no records of him being on Devil's Island. And
so the question is
I'd love to tell you all the stories, what's actually true and what isn't.
Is it fiction or nonfiction?
It's part fiction.
Okay, there you go. It is also quite beautiful. So going to Devil's Island is a full day trip, and you get on a catamaran, and
it's about an hour off the coast of Kourou.
Yeah.
About 9 miles. You're out in the ocean, so now it's blue water, not the brown water.
Oh, and it's so gorgeous.
From the rivers, and it's very pretty, but also very powerful.
Well, I was going to say that, as you're on this catamaran, you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, this isn't such a bad thing, to be out in the middle of a beautiful island, to be imprisoned. But it was awful. I mean, they had people in cells that didn't see daylight for
They would bring
months.
them out every 3 days. They would bring them out to let them see daylight so that they wouldn't go blind. I mean, it was incredible.
There was
and a lot of the ruins are still there and still left, and you can explore and man's inhumanity to man.
There was one cell I remember walking in, and they chained you naked to a bar, your feet and your arms. And And I remember looking at this thing and it was just so overwhelming because I realized that this didn't happen so long ago.
No, no. And they're quite extensive. I mean, there were thousands of prisoners. Most of them, it was cheaper to have political, but it was also a way to try to populate French Guiana, to Guyane Francais, as they say, because when you served your sentence, whatever your sentence was, you had an 8-year sentence, you then had to stay in French Guiana for another 8 years before you were freed.
But then after you leave Devil's Island, let me see if I can, you stop at the space station.
The space station is also in Kourou, and they shoot rockets. There's a Russian Soyuz program that also sends up rockets for satellites from here. There's no manned flight. It's all satellites pretty much sending up. And it's a huge, extensive space thing, and it's a half-day tour, and you're quite surprised that you're in the middle of nowhere where all these rockets, etc. are. They also have a strong Hmong that were brought to French Guiana after the Vietnam War. The French pulled out of Vietnam. There were quite a few Hmong people that were working with the French, and they thought they would be, mistreated. And so they were brought out by the French and settled in French Guiana, and they brought their culture and their ways. And on Sundays, there's a huge open-air market, again, with all these Hmong people with their various produce and things that they brought with them. And it's quite interesting and very unique and very different.
And I think this is the last location that we have in French Guiana.
And this is to the east of Cayenne. There's this marshy area.
Beautiful.
It's very beautiful. You can overnight. There's actually a little houseboat hotel that's in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can just go in a boat and explore. You can do a half day, you can do a few hours, whatever you want to do. It's entirely up to you. It takes about an hour and a half from Cayenne down there.
And then on your way
on your way back, if you're going back to Suriname, or when you're coming in Saint Laurent de Maroni, there's also the transportation center where all the convicts and originally people settling and slaves, etc., were all sorted here and sent out to all the Papillon was here.
That we know for sure.
That we know, but whether he was in the other places, we don't know.
And now we're going to turn it back over to Jenna. And
yay, I'm here.
Good, but we just want to encourage everybody, this was so short, even though I know it was long. There's so much to tell you. So please, Jenna.
There's 3 countries. You can't do 3 countries in half an hour.
Well,
possible. Or an hour. I know it's tough. That's all right. You know what? Almost everybody stayed on with us the whole time. So you guys were doing something right, because everybody was still interested. And I know we have a lot of great questions coming through, but I don't want to take up any more time than we have to. I'm just going to ask one very, very quickly here. And it was about the group sizes that you guys can accommodate at Wilderness Explorers if you're going through all 3 countries.
That's such a good question, Jenna.
It is a good question.
Thank you. Most of these villages are small. So our tour size really goes up to about 12. Because you're dealing with lodges that have 8 to 10 cabins.
So, I mean, technically you can do, say, up to 16, but everybody would have to double up.
Yeah.
So we say 12 because the plane size is also 12.
The other thing is that what you should know is that these tours are really personalized. So, which you can't really do when you have 40 people traveling,
No.
But when you have 12, you can really, really tweak it just to fit everybody's needs. So that's really what we do.
I mean, it's part of our charm and part of what attracts people to a thing. It's not Costa Rica or Belize, because when you go to Caires Falls, the plane only holds 12 people. So the most people you will have with you in your group are 12, and you're walking around. And if there's a second plane, they stagger them. It comes a half an hour later. So by the time you're on your tour going, the next plane arrives, so you don't see them.
And you really feel like you have, whether it's Guyana or Suriname or French Guiana, It's yours.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. Thank you so much for that. I know there's a ton of people typing through questions, and as I mentioned, that's the only one that I'm going to ask for today. But what we are going to get Andrea and Salvador to do is to answer all of these questions, and we're going to include those in the webinar follow-up. The other thing I'm going to do is provide you with their contact information, their email addresses, so that you can speak to them directly about the trips, the itineraries, any of these other questions you have. I'm going to hook you up with their contact info so that you can ask directly to the source. So, well, perfect there. They brought back on to say goodbye. So thank you everybody so much for joining us, and Andrea and Salvador, thank you so much. I always love your presentation, so we really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you.
And we were funny, weren't we?
You were, I mean, I think so. I was glad I was muted because I almost laughed a few times there. I was like, oh, that would have come. So,
But guys, when Jenna gives you our contact information, don't hesitate.
Please.
We're happy to answer any questions and develop anything specially for you.
Absolutely. We love developing special.
Yes.
you're so cute. All right, on that note, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and you'll hear from us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,